So hi Corey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. I watched Daughter the other day and I loved it. It was like just the surreal thriller that I was looking for that day. So it was
Mhm.
perfect. So
Glad to hear that. Yeah.
so to my knowledge, this is also your first like real dive into writing and directing feature film. Is that correct?
Yeah, first time. Well, first time getting one over the finish line. I'd say there were a couple of false starts along the way, but finally get this one done.
Well, awesome. How did this story kind of come about?
Yeah, it was a bit out of just creative curiosity, and then a bit out of just the practical concerns of making a film on a micro budget. So from the onset, I knew that this is something that was going to be shot for very little money, which means not a lot of locations, not a lot of moves, not a huge cast or action or anything like that. And so within that confine, I wanted to find something that could be creatively interesting and unique, and allow me to experiment with visual style a little bit, because that was something that was important to me for the first film that I would direct. And so it was built out of necessity. I think I knew I wanted to do something in the thriller genre, because I think of any other genre that gives you the most creative liberty to experiment, because you can always deliver on those audience expectations in cool ways. And from there, it just became, what do I want to see this cast do? So Vivian, Ian, and Elise were part of the project from day one. I knew I was writing for those three actors, and I knew I was going to be creating this father character around them. And it was really a an exercise in just exploring these central questions in the film. And I want to say I did write an outline for it that I did not follow at all when it came to actually writing the script. I found the outline the other day. I completely forgot I wrote one for this. Found it the other day and started reading it. Like, yeah, I didn't do any of this. I don't know what happened. But I think we're just really kind of being creatively free, knowing that this was something that I was going to be responsible for bringing to life. That I wasn't going to have to, put the script in front of somebody else and say, please, please let me make this movie. Like, no, I'm writing this and I'm going to go make it. And that gave me a certain kind of state of mind to just be free and experiment and kind of be self-indulgent as a filmmaker. You don't always get to do that.
Nice. Um, Kind of speaking on the experimentation, you did a lot of really cool things. I particularly liked the juxtaposition of the really loud music with the very sparse dialogue, but also how the camera angles kind of made things just visually like more separated than they probably should have been.
Mhm.
Um, what inspired like this type of experimentation?
I think it came from a few different things. The first would be, I knew I wanted this film to not have a contemporary time period, or not really be able to be placed in terms of when exactly it takes place. Um, and I knew I wanted this to look like as if it could have been made in another era, rather than just being nostalgic for the 80s or 90s, something like that, but to actually make it look like this was a product of a different decade, a past decade in filmmaking. And so studying those films, you'll notice that the camera moves differently. There's a different sort of weight to it behind those movies, just because of the technology they were working with and wanting to um, get as close to that as we could. So even when it came to shooting on film, there are, modern film cameras on it too. We didn't use those. We used a generation behind what modern film 16 millimeter cameras were, so that we would kind of be locked into older technology in a certain way. And so that was something that I knew I wanted to do from day one. And beyond that, I think stylistically, I was looking for, could there be some type of middle ground between slow cinema as genre and a contemporary thriller, and what could that look like? So going and approaching it at, I know I didn't want to have a lot of, or any handheld movement or any, quick camera pans or things like that. I wanted to sort of be locked off where I could, shoot masters where I could, really just as an experiment to see, like, could this sort of design work for a film like this? And just be willing to take that risk and see what happens. And it was, really fun to do.
And it definitely paid off for sure. Um, in the beginning of the film, it says that this is based more fact than fiction. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that would be looking at these stories that we'd see in the news about the horrible things that people actually do to each other, whether it be like the kidnappings, or there was a news story about a few months or a year before I wrote Daughter, where we learned about this guy who was chaining up his family in his house. I think it was here in California. And so that was the direct, not inspiration for the film, but inspiration for that title card. And so like how little of that sort of thing I actually have to make up to tell a story like this. There are people out there that are doing this to each other.
Wow. I would not have guessed.
Mhm.
And that's actually really scary when you
Yeah.
think about it. Um, I also thought it was interesting how you kept the characters not so much nameless, but it was just like they were their roles,
Mhm.
basically. Can you explain the choice for that a little bit further too?
Yeah. I think when you lock a bunch of characters in a room together and try to create some kind of drama or some kind of tension out of that, it's all going to come through how they relate to each other, like what their relationships are between one person and the next. And that just sort of naturally lent itself to naming them based on those relationships, whether somebody gets called, son or brother, that sort of thing. And constructing everything around that, even back to how the camera would move and, frame them versus based on who they're talking to. The camera would do something different if it's a mother-father scene versus a mother-daughter scene, that sort of thing. But it was really trying to bring out as much as I could with how these characters would relate to each other in a given scene or even a given frame.
That makes sense. That does. And what was it like working with your cast in creating all of this?
I mean, it was great. It was incredible. I think to do something like this with such a small, like, we had a 12-day shoot schedule that ended up becoming like an 11-day shoot schedule, really. Um, Not a lot of rehearsal. We had a couple of like read throughs early on. The cast got the script early, but we didn't get to have any big like let's figure out what this is uh, rehearsals with it. We just kind of dropped in and had to make it. So I think being able to show up on that set every day into this weird reality that's not quite our reality and our performances that are not quite natural performances, being able to show up and do that, and like I owe this film to this cast. Other another group of people might not have been able to pull that off, and I would have looked like an idiot trying to talk about this film in that way. So I think it was an incredible work experience.
Well, that's awesome. What is something you're really excited for the audience to see when they watch this movie?
Um, I'm excited for I'm excited for them to see what the film really is, because I think even like from the opening shot or from just the genre banner that this is a horror thriller, I think that will come with a certain type of expectation about what they think they're going to get when they go into the movie. And I'm curious as the film goes on and they see, wait a minute, this is something else. I'm curious about what that response is going to be. I think people that so far have chosen to take the film on its terms and they really want to dig in and engage and try to find the meaning. Fortunately, they've been rewarded by doing that. And I hope an audience who chooses to do that will continue to be rewarded. But for others, that might mean they're bored out of their mind. I don't know. We'll see.
Um, and since you mentioned that this is based more on fact than fiction, is there anything that you hope the audience takes away?
I think it's just be mindful of how we relate to one another. The central premise of the character relationships is based on this idea that people are their own subjectivities, but they're also objects within the subjectivities of other people. And nobody really likes to be objectified, but that is the source of that conflict and that tension is how we relate to others and how others relate to us within our subjectivities. And so I think a film like this, where all of the drama and all of the tension is built on that, on those crosses and how people treat each other, hopefully people would come out of an idea with the idea that maybe you do need to be a little bit more understanding of someone else's perspective or someone else's worldview and how you relate to them.
That's interesting. Yeah, it definitely makes you like think about relationships for sure. Um, all right. I kind of forgot where I'm at with time, but I'm at my last open-ended question. Before I let you go, is there anything else you would like to add about Daughter?
Um, no, I hope everybody enjoys it. Well, not everybody. Everybody's not going to enjoy it. I hope a lot of people enjoy it.
Awesome. I'm sure a lot will.
All right, thanks so much.